Morning, everyone.
Morning, Wesley. Okay, so meeting's in order. Um, Welcome everyone to the CDA meeting. So the first thing on our agenda, we really only have two things on our agenda. Uh, First one's easy, the consideration of the CDA minutes from our meeting way back in May 30th, 2025. So, any questions or discussions about those minutes?
Move to approve the meeting minutes, May 30th.
Any second? Second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Those minutes have passed. Um, Now on to the main reason why we're all here. So today we're going to consider recommendations on the Phase 2 application submitted by Spurl Commercial LLC for the public assistance to develop affordable housing at 4450 North Oakland Avenue. And if applicable, statement of the public benefit of the project. So Rebecca, can you kind of give us the outline and walk us through what we're going to do here today?
Sounds good. Thank you for that introduction. We have Brian Spurl, developer for Spurl Commercial LLC. He's going to provide a brief update to the CDA on what has changed since the Phase 1 application that's different, reflected in the Phase 2 application. We then have our financial consultant, Baker Tilly, who has conducted an independent review of the financials associated with the Phase 2 application. Joining us here today is David Erdman from Baker Tilly in person, and then online is Joshua Davis, who is going to be walking us through the Baker Tilly report that you find located within your packet, and they'll be able to answer any questions that you may have. Following that, the CDA members will then ask questions of the developer and consultant. And then following that discussion, we anticipate that there may be people here from the public who may have a desire to provide public comment. We'll ask them to come to the microphone, keep to a minute of about 2 minutes for items that are related to specifically this agenda item, which is the Phase 2 application and the request for public assistance. And then concluding that, the CDA has been asked by Policy 40 to provide a recommendation on whether or not to recommend this application move forward to the village board, and if so, the amount of assistance requested at the estimated 1.6 million. After that time, then the CDA is going to be asked to adjourn into closed session. So a member of the CDA should make that motion, reading through the entire motion as it's listed on the agenda. We'll second to that. The meeting then will adjourn into closed session. The public will be requested to leave. The doors will be shut, and then the CDA is going to have really an opportunity to deliberate and review possible terms for development agreement. At the conclusion of closed session, the CDA will reconvene into open session, and essentially we're seeking direction on one item, which is whether to recommend that the village board move forward with preparation of a development agreement for purposes of this Phase 2 application, or whether they not. So if you don't move forward with the development agreement, you're likely not also recommending that the Phase 2 application move forward. But we will not be discussing terms that are discussed within the scope of closed session. Those are ones that we will take as advisement and then forward to the board under the scope of closed session. The board then will receive those in closed session, and ultimately the village board will decide how to proceed with respect to your recommendations. So for summary purposes, the CDA under Policy 40 is a recommending body. So you're being requested by this policy to provide recommendations to the village board. When they get to the village board can review that recommendation, take that recommendation, reject that recommendation, modify that recommendation as they see fit for the village. I'm going to pause for a second because I just provided a lot of information, but I wanted to see if there's any questions from the CDA members.
No, I think it's important what you just brought up, and because members of the public that are here may not fully know, because I barely know, since we haven't met for a long time on this, but that we are just recommending something to the board. We are not making any binding decisions here today. So,
Correct.
yeah.
And just a reminder for
that's really going to happen at the board level, is what I'm saying.
just a reminder for CDA members, because we don't have this is wonderful. Thank you for the public for coming. But we don't typically have a lot of people at CDA meetings. So in conjunction with how we, receive public comment, it's a receive only. So not a dialogue, because the comments that are being provided aren't necessarily listed for any discussion or action within the scope of the agenda. And then just a reflection point of where we are at in the process overall. Spurl submitted a phase 1 application that has been recommended by this body. It has been provided to the board. The board has also provided direction to proceed to phase 2. That's why this phase 2 application is coming to the CDA, because of that action that took place in phase 1. It's also important to note, just for context of the public and the CDA, is that to John's point, you're a recommending body, but even when it goes to the board, outside of action from the village, in this proposal in the phase 2 application, the development does not proceed unless the other financing sources are also aligned. And that has its own process that's separate from the village. So if you'll see in the packet, I kind of called up just some key dates to keep in mind. So even if this phase 2 application proceeds, there's still financing that needs to be obtained from WIDA in the form of 9% tax credits. And then there's also federal home loan funding that's required, of which the application cycle is not until later in this year, with notification, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, in October. So I just kind of want to provide, it's definitely a moving, we only have input over some elements of it. But want to just kind of bring that to the forefront so everyone knows that landscape.
Kathy?
So for those of us that have not been through this process before, and this is the first time we've been through process 40, so it's new for all of us. So if the approval of the RFP for affordable housing in public parking lots was the starting line, and the finish line is an occupied affordable housing building, where would we be right now? 50? I mean, in terms of hurdles and difficulty, just for context?
Oh, if I were to break, I haven't thought about how I would break that down into percentage, but I would say.
We're using a football metaphor now?
Sure.
Right,
I
do you
love
have a comment?
sports.
Yeah. I mean,
Boy, I would say probably
less than 25%.
20.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah.
I would say that we're more like 70% there, because we won the right to compete for the tax credits. That's a huge win, because you have to they have a initial round, which is more of it's a concept round, but the reason that we advanced is because we score well, and I think our chances of obtaining the 9% funds are very high. And so if you approve the TIF, we can't advance in the WIDA 9% competitive without a commitment for the TIF. And so technically we're 100% there, because without the TIF approval, there is no WIDA.
Thank you.
Yeah, that makes sense. But for the village process, we're maybe further, we're not quite there, but from your perspective, I get it. Yeah. Right.
I should say the board needs
Yeah.
95%.
Right. But from a concept perspective, this is it's very likely to move forward if we decide that that's what we want to do, if the village decides what we want to do.
Yes, the building is designed and the funding is in place to put this building on that lot. We've met the initial criteria of WIDA to do that. We meet all their qualifications.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions right now before we have Mr. Pearl kind of give his presentation from the board, from the group? Okay. Brian, if you want to go ahead and give your presentation.
Sure. So what's changed? We won. We committed to applying for the WIDA 9% competitive round, and we've advanced. Part of that advancement comes with some additional stipulations. One is that we have to put in an elevator to comply with what WIDA outlines as visitable units. So those are what are called type C visitable. It's a design aspect that they require. It's not required by the building code. It's required by WIDA.
That's unfortunate.
It is. It adds a lot of costs.
Right. Perfect example of why it's very hard to build affordable housing anymore.
Yeah. Whitefish Bay, I don't need an elevator. I took a lot of expense out of that building as a result, but I didn't take the tax credits because the county put in the gap. In this case, we have to have an elevator. That's just part of the design.
How much does an elevator add to the cost?
Well, there's the elevator itself, but then you have to put in corridors. And so we had to redesign the building to support the elevator. But it all fits. It fits very nicely. The building looks the same as I originally presented.
Okay.
You want questions at the end or?
Sure.
I'm just-
I can take
We
questions.
do it back and forth.
On the pages at the end of the document, the 3 Excel spreadsheets, where do I see the elevator added?
In the base building construction costs.
So that cost went from,
It's 300,000 more. So that's elevator and all the necessary building items that go around an elevator, building elevator shaft, increase in power, sprinkler systems,
But that doesn't
common area
include
finishes.
maintenance, ongoing maintenance though.
Maintenance is in our operating budget.
Oh, it is. Okay. But that would have increased slightly as well. Probably not significantly, but
Correct.
Yeah.
But
so the 3.7 million construction cost would be 3.4. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not sure what you're reading, but
Page 3 of the Baker Tilly.
in the pro forma, the construction costs have gone up by 300,000. The hard costs.
Just a quick question from me. Sorry, it's hard to jump in. I know that we added an elevator to the cost of $300,000. I'm just confirming, and I saw this in the packet, so I'm assuming it's true, but I just wanted to get on the record. The building remains 19 units, and those units, the space within those units has not been impacted by the addition of the corridor or the elevator itself. It's been designed into it to preserve the units and their space, right?
Correct. Yep. The unit count has not changed. The units mix has not changed. It's the same amount of units. So it's 4 3-bedrooms, 7 2-bedrooms, 8 1-bedrooms. That's been a constant. And the rents haven't changed either.
Has the square footage of the units changed?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Has WIDA's commitment increased due to their financial commensurate with their request that you add $1 million to your project cost?
The tax credits that have been awarded are fixed.
So that's a no.
No. But to keep in mind, the things that we have to do to win the credits are what they are. You
Right,
don't
I'm
do
just-
it, you don't
I'm just
win it.
clarifying, they gave you $1 million in extra requirements, but didn't offer any. There's a shortfall there. Essentially.
I mean, keep in mind that where we started with this is different than where we are now. We, as a community and as a developer, agreed to pursue the 9% credits.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not.
And
with
to
that.
pursue the 9% credits, you just got to follow the rules, and this is what it takes to win.
Oh, but you've done these projects before, but you sound like you were surprised that you needed an elevator. Is this the first time you've done this with LIHTC?
No. We have another project up in Sturgeon Bay that we're in the same position. But when we started that original application, we could build the building as a 3-story walk-up without an elevator.
In Sturgeon Bay?
No, in
Here.
Whitefish
Oh.
Bay. So you
You
can
ju-
do it
you
under
just
the
didn't
building
know.
code, you just can't do it under WIDA. And so what's changed between app 1 and really going back to the RFP is that we as collectively, we decided to pursue the 9% tax credits. By pursuing the 9% tax credits, we will also qualify for the Federal Home Loan Bank AHP, which is another $950,000. So to obtain $4.7 million in funds, this is what we have to do.
And how competitive is that next stage? You'll be one of a pool of how many?
9% list, I want to say it's around 50. It's a public document. I could send it to you if you'd like, trustee.
You must know, though. I mean, how hard is this next round going to be? You must be
Well, I wouldn't be
prepared.
here if I didn't think we could win. And I think so by doing what WIDA is asking us to do, we score an additional 10 points. That's basically what gets us to be a winner.
The 10 points given by the WIDA.
The 10 points makes us a winner, in my view.
Brian, was there anything else was there anything else you wanted to go over in your presentation before we move on to the Baker Tilly report?
Not necessarily. If there's any other questions by, I guess you could, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that we also, and this was a change, a recent change by WIDA, but we have to capitalize supportive services for this project. That's really what, of that million you just talked about, Joe, 750,000 is capitalizing supportive services.
Yeah, maybe
Explain that. in-
you
in-
go
for
over that a
everybody
little
else.
bit, because I was actually surprised to learn that that's a thing. And I don't remember it ever coming up in our discussions of affordable housing previously. It probably did, but I just don't remember.
Well, you don't have to do it.
Yeah. So give us a little bit of an overview of what that means, because I think that's important for people to understand.
Right, and people
Sure what that
listening
is.
along,
Yep.
explain it as if
Well,
I'm a fourth grader.
Understood. Did
I
you-
was just gonna say, I've done some work with Bradley, and I'm not sure. Project.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm not an expert in supportive services. I'm an expert in development and winning tax credits. I'll put that out there. We do hire, in this case, we've asked for proposals, at least from Lutheran Social Services as an example. They're the provider in our Sturgeon Bay project. But basically the way this works is that you hire this agency, and I'll just read this out loud because this is basically what their role is. The role of the service provider will be to set up intake meetings with residents and create an individual service plan. The service provider will then work with each resident to achieve identified goals such as employment, educational assistance, life skill development, physical and mental health support. The service provider will also coordinate referrals with local organizations. So we have to build an office essentially in this building that's available for this service provider to come when needed. And this is a requirement for what's called the WIDA Appendix S. And I did send that to Rebecca and what that's required of WIDA. The Appendix S and providing these supportive services is what scores us the 10 points, which makes us a winner in WIDA. We don't have to do it, but we wouldn't get the 10 points and we'd probably lose.
If we were to build more affordable housing projects in the village, would we be able to utilize the same services, the same office for each of the affordable housing units, or do you need one for each development?
It's for this specific development, which is what changed in this QAP round this year. Literally, like I just found out about this like a few weeks ago, where they now make you capitalize the full 30 years, which, if you take those services and put a, CPI increase each year over year, that's what they want to see. They want to make sure that you have the funds. And so those funds would
When you
sit in an
say
account.
capitalize, does that
Yeah,
mean they
that's-
have to be in escrow?
We
Where?
have to set aside 700, the
So the-
amount of funds to fund social services for 30 years for this project, aside in an account, 700 plus thousand. That's a new mandate, correct? Am I saying that correct?
Well,
what he
you could,
means by
pay, you
capitalize.
could either capitalize it that way or prove to WIDA how you're going to pay it over the next 30 years.
So
You
it
have
could
to
be,
have-
but it can't be part of the operating costs?
It could be.
Oh, it could be. Okay. Okay.
And sorry.
That's very interesting. I just want to make a comment because sometimes this is what I found interesting was that this exists and there's been a lot of discussion about how many quote unquote affordable housing units Shorewood has right now, which actually is officially not many, but yes, we have apartments that are cheaper than other apartments. But this is a big piece of what you get when you build legitimate affordable housing underneath these new rules. And I didn't realize that. And that's sort of a big deal because basically what we're saying is all the residents of this building are going to get free and or low cost. Is it free or is it low cost?
No, it's really intended for it's really for the units because also to obtain the Federal Home Loan Bank AHP funds, which is 950,000, 20% of your units need to go to supportive housing type services. And so having that service available for those units and for the supportive housing units identified in this Appendix S, that's what it's for. And it's required by both, basically, as I said earlier, to win $4.7 million.
What's AHP?
It's the Affordable Housing Program of the Federal Home Loan Bank.
When you mentioned the office for the support services, where are you planning on keeping that in the building? What does that look like? What does that, because it's supposed to be a place for therapy and for, a place families to use. Like, what does that, where is that going to be in the building?
Well, we have it on the first floor right now, but it can move around.
So is there a public toilet there? Does the employee have a place?
Yes.
So it had to add a public toilet.
Yes.
And your square footage per unit has stayed the same.
Yes.
Wow. So it all came out of hallways and corridors and utility spaces?
My planner is very good.
Yeah. I mean, I can see on a big scale how this could really, it's a wonderful thing to make available to 19 households. But you can certainly see why on a large scale development, this would be a lot more meaningful than for 19.
I don't know. I think it's meaningful for 19.
I agree.
It is,
saying-
but I think what you're saying is economies of scale. It
Yeah.
makes more sense if you have a 100-unit development versus 19. Or
Well,
if
but
you could
a
somehow
100-unit
utilize
development, by
this.
the way, wouldn't even pencil out. 9% deals are all under 50 units
Oh, interesting.
because there's a cap on the amount of tax credits that they will allow.
Yeah.
Brian, would you just be able to clarify, the money set aside is for purposes of funding 4 units for these services, but are the services available to all 19?
Um,
I'm sorry, did you say the number 4 units or FOUR?
Yes, FOUR.
Okay, so could you repeat that again?
And I could be misstating this, so I want to just be clear. The funds that are set aside, or that 766,000, are to provide these services for 4 units.
it's to support the units that qualify.
And is
Okay.
that 30, 50, or 60? Is that where the eligibility falls into, is with that income percent?
It's for the 30% units.
So for 4 30% units, we're adding an office space and a bathroom.
Those are the rules. Yes.
And do the other, and they're obligated, those people in those 4 units are obligated as part of their rental agreement, participate in this?
I am not an expert in supportive services. And I think Alex is online here. Alex, do you have anything to add to that?
Hey everyone, Alex DeLaw from Baker Tilly, Brian's consultant. Yeah, so the 4 units will be 30% units, so they're supportive units that will be committed to the project. And in theory, any of the tenants can utilize those services, but it's specifically intended for those 4.
But thanks, Alex. But sorry, just to jump in, but just to be very clear, this is a WIDA condition. In order to get that 9% tax credit, it's specific who we offer this service to, who we're limited to offer the service to, and what must be provided. Like this is not something we can negotiate or have flexibility in. Am I correct in making that statement?
You're correct. This is a hard set aside. Yep.
So if someone doesn't show up for their appointment with the job counselor, are they evicted?
No.
No, they go to social services for counseling.
That would kind of go against the.
If you don't show up, I'm just saying
Well, I don't think there's anything that says that people have to use these services.
They're just available.
So
Yeah, the services are voluntary to the tenants, but they have to be provided the option.
I see. Thank you.
Can these
Thank you, Alex.
can these services be used by the wider community, or is it exclusive to the development?
It's for this project. So that is really all I have to add. I think with respect to how we won or how we've advanced to the next stage and what's changed.
okay. Any other questions right now for Brian, or should we move on?
I just wanted to throw in, and maybe you could speak to this because you went through it far more intimately than any of us have. But for those that might be wondering, they've heard talk today about sort of the scorecard or the report card from WIDA. How do we decide who, where? And it's, they look at a ton of different factors. One, how much affordable housing is in the area and what's the average rents, and is this needed in this area? If the answer is it's highly needed, you get a really high score as opposed to a low score. They look at things like how close are you to jobs and employment. You get a high score if you're closer, or lower score if you're far away. And other things such as, what is public transit nearby, high or low, and that kind of thing. So just to help people understand, when you were talking about like a score of 10 versus 0 versus 5 or somewhere in between, for people that might not have the benefit of knowing what you're facing as you're going through this process, maybe you could just briefly speak to that scorecard or that report card that might help people understand that.
Well, the biggest, sure. I might have to have Alex step in at some point, but the short version is there are categories, and where Shorewood scores very, very high is in what's called economic opportunity, and that is a function of affordability in the community, which The reason you score high is because it's unaffordable to live here in the eyes of WIDA.
It's not.
It's not affordable. And so you score very high on points because the whole purpose of the program is to put affordable housing in areas that don't have affordable housing. And so that's why we score very well there. But there are other communities that score well too. And it's a highly competitive process. And so Alex, I don't know if you want to add anything to each of the scoring categories, but the big one is the financial aspect of it. That's the other reason we score well, is because of the TIF funds that you're putting into the project. That covers the gap. That goes to the financial feasibility of it. We score points for that. You want to add anything, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I think you touched on it. I mean, developers try and max out all of their points to the best of their ability. So, this one scores very well in areas of economic opportunity. There's a total of 27 points available, and Brian's deal scores 26. So, other areas that he potentially could have scored in would have been community or qualifying census tract. However, this project is not in a QCT, so then he can't get the points for including a community service facility in the building. So from the perspective of the unit mix, he's maxing out all of his 30% and 50% points. He's maxing out supportive housing, veterans housing, pursuing, an advanced energy efficiency certification. So there are a lot of items that go into the scoring overall. And where Baker Tilly comes into play, we get to score out several developers' deals, and we have a strong sense that, these 10 supportive housing points are critical to Brian's deal being competitive, because had he not been able to, pursue those points, he would be around the scores that a lot of other developers are at, where, there's a stronger chance that he would not win the award. So we strongly feel, and we suggested to Brian, that he pursue these supportive housing points. And as he mentioned, we had recently changed their Appendix S guidelines, where they now require him to capitalize the costs for the full 30 years, as opposed to before it was just 15 years. And this was a new change in the recent QAP, where before WIDA was not requiring these costs to be included in the budget or in the operating budget, but now they are. So they changed it from Brian's phase one application, where the reserve that was capitalized was covering for 15 years, but now in Brian's recent request, the reserve is covering for the full 30 years.
So I'd like to add that the TIF asks that we're asking for, the 1.7 from the very get-go, from all the way back in the RFP days, has not changed.
So what changed? What's your profit? What's your margin? I mean,
It's
I
just
think in our
it's a
typical-
function of pursuing the tax credits as we agreed to do, and what it takes to win those credits. That's the only thing that changed.
But I guess my bottom line, you've clearly worked very hard on this, and I'm grateful for all your work.
Thank you.
I just, so the TIF amount, this is the first time we're using our policy 40. We say it should not exceed 15% of the total project costs, and you're asking for 22%. So already we're being asked to do more than we ever wanted to do by setting up this policy. What happens to your margin if you bring us to if you conform with our 15% of total? What would that
You'll have a gap in the project financing. It has nothing to do with margin or profit to me. None. Our fees are all fixed by WIDA.
But I mean, you're not in this as a charity, so.
I've disclosed what our development fee is from day one. It's never changed.
But you set the price on the land. Anyway, so you won't tell me what your profit margin is?
No, our development fee is disclosed in this package.
Where is that?
It's in the budget page.
You don't know off the top of your head what your developer fee is?
I don't actually.
Kathy,
That
it's
hasn't
right
been a
on
focus
page
for me.
3
Okay, thank
of
you.
the Baker Tilly.
Just,
report.
why don't, what would it take for you to come in to conform with the 15% of total project costs that we have in our policy? That would be meaningful to people here who worked through this policy. You know, this was a big deal after TID 1, Metro Market, the Light Horse.
Sure,
Getting this TID policy was a big deal.
sure.
And so now we're being asked on our first go around here to exceed the total percent of project costs. What would it take for you to get that to align with our policy?
The project, as it's currently being presented and capitalized, covers the funding to do this project. We would, if we reduce that amount, we won't have enough funds. We won't qualify for WIDA, and this party's over.
So you couldn't come up with the money yourself?
There is no more money.
Just to jump in here quickly, looking at just as I reviewed the packet, and maybe this makes sense, and maybe this is germane. I don't really know, but the Baker Tilly study that we had last time around identified an internal rate of return at 8.25% with the incentive between or PwC, sorry, it was PwC. The PwC range was 6.88% to 10.75%. So
What's the
there were-
PW?
Go ahead, Kathy.
I'm sorry, what's the PwC?
PricewaterhouseCoopers, the accountant's report. Now, I'm not an accountant, so I'm just kind of reviewing the packet on the fly here for my notes. But there was something about internal rate of return that we discussed last time around, and I think PwC, if I'm reading it correctly, identified that as well within kind of the parameters they set when reviewing a project.
Well, I'm not sure we're talking about the same thing. I mean, return to who?
Again, I don't mean to take us down a rabbit hole here, but I'm just the point that the larger point that I'm trying to make is that I think we employed an accountant to take a look at some of these numbers, and there has been some identification of kind of the profit margins and whether they're within the normal range. And I believe that the conclusion of the accountants that we hired was that they were. So I was just trying to add that to the discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I think, and I'll let them speak to that, but the reason that the tax credit investors engage in these projects, so the tax credits, it's I don't know if that's the appropriate term, but that's the term that's used in the industry. You buy a tax credit at a discount so that you can use it to reduce your overall taxes, but you pay upfront equity for that tax credit. And so the funds that are coming into this project, in this case, 3.7 million roughly from the tax credit investor, they only get their return based upon the price that they pay for the tax credit and the depreciation in the project. And they have to get back in tax savings 3.7 million plus a return on that 3.7 million for it to make sense.
I just have, may I have one
I-
more?
So I have a question, maybe for Rebecca. I do not remember what this 15% is even relating to, like where it came from, why it's in there. Since Kathy seems to want to talk about it, maybe we should go back and remember why it's even in here.
Mhm.
And I see there's a note, it's 15% property assembly cap. Is that the right term?
If you're looking at the memo, the 15% was something that was generally discussed by the CDA at the time that they put together the policy. However, they also said,
But we didn't come up with that number.
no.
Someone told us that number. And
Correct.
I don't remember
I don't-
who and why.
Yeah, unless you were on the CDA in 2021.
I was.
Okay.
I wasn't.
I've
But
been
you
here
know,
forever.
it's a couple years away.
Could I help
But
with
that was a long time ago. And I had stuff going on.
I wasn't there, but I can make a probably educated guess. So if you think about a lot of the things that are in policy 40, they're really designed and set up before tax incremental financing or tax incremental district is created. And so of course, on the front end, you're looking at, we want to make sure that we have a development at the end of the day that creates enough increment above the base value of the TID at the beginning. So in other words, if the TID is, if the property's worth $500,000, and we're going to get a new development that's worth, $2.5 million or $3 million, that the additional tax that's created, which we call the increment, is going to make enough money over the life of the TID that it's going to pay back the money that we're going to borrow or bond for the expenses that we're going to pay. In other words, we're going to do new infrastructure, new municipal infrastructure, maybe curb, gutter, sewer, all those things, and we're going to give a incentive to the developer. So what that percentage is, it represents a caution that we don't want to get too deep into this thing, such that what happens if it's not worth 4.5 million, or the business doesn't do as well as we anticipate, and it doesn't create the increment? We don't want to be left with a bill at the end of the 20x years life, depending on how long the TID goes. We don't want to be there. So that's sort of an internal precaution on the front end. We don't have that. We don't have that here. The TID closed a while ago, and under state law, and remember also at the beginning, you're looking at the but-for test, and you're looking at a property that wouldn't be developed but for the investment of public funds. This is a totally different animal that Rule 40 or Policy 40 really wasn't anticipated for. And they changed state law, and they said, look, if you have a TID that's about to close and it's creating enough increment and it's paying off all of its bills and it's ready to close, you can extend that TID for 2 years and continue to leave that base of the property and collect that additional tax revenue, which we call increment, for 2 more years, and set it aside if you dedicate at least 75% of it to affordable housing, and then the remaining 25% on nothing other than improvements to your housing stock. So we have the money's sitting there. So in terms of, the question is, what do you want to spend it on? If that 75% of that is for affordable housing, such as this, your job is to make sure that the money that we do spend goes to something that will generate affordable housing, like it's contemplated by the village when it did that, and also by state law. And we would have a development agreement that says, it's committed for X amount of years, all that kind of stuff. So the 15% is really addressing a different problem at the front end, as opposed to where we are now post the TID's already closed. The money's just sitting in a bank somewhere. So really the question is the juice worth the squeeze in relationship to a particular development? We have X amount of dollars we can invest in affordable housing. And, we're not going to be, it's not the problem like on the front end of a TID where we could end up upside down and end up paying for improvements because there's not enough increment. That doesn't exist. So really the question is, are we getting a return on our investment or not? So I think that the 15% is addressing primarily a different problem that doesn't exist here, if that helps.
Yeah, and just to put a finer point on Nate's argument there, I would just say that, having been on the CDA as well, I completely hear and agree with Kathy's point that when you have a policy, you want to strive to follow the policy. And if you deviate from it, you want to have a good reason for deviation. And from what I remember of the discussions, kind of aligns with what Nate just said, which is that, the 15% is really meant so that the project is viable. We know the project is viable. So we wanted to put a limitation there, because if you're going too high on that number, you might not have viability down the road. So I understand the policy, want to strive to follow it, but I do see a reason to deviate in this circumstance.
Yeah,
Right.
Trustee Warren, myself, and I think Joe Graham were all on the village board when we were working on that policy. And it was exactly what you were saying, was for when we were creating TID, which at this point we're not. It's sort of on the back end. So, I think.
So it's important, but
it is important.
maybe not super critical in the analysis of this particular project to say, this is a huge problem to increase by 7%.
I think
it sounds like it's kind of a non-issue in this particular situation because the money's there. Yes, we might technically be exceeding it, but we're also not, we're not as a village doing much in terms of infrastructure costs or anything like that.
I mean, I think
There's
it's
none.
important.
And the project is still feasible. Otherwise, Brian wouldn't be standing here in front of us. WIDA wouldn't be moving forward with their plans. There's a lot of people way smarter than me looking at this. And
I mean, I think it's important, and I think it's important to, when you make a policy, to, if right out the gate, the first time you use it, you have an exception to the policy, it is important to really understand, like, why are we making an exception to that policy right out? You know, I think that's the question. And so really sort of scrutinizing that decision is an important question to ask. But I don't know if that's reason enough to say we shouldn't do it.
And to Trustee Carpenter's point, when
No,
this,
I'm not a trustee.
well, I mean, partially, old habit, right? CDA member, Carpenter. When the policy was developed, that's why the second line that follows it was added. Because the group acknowledged at the point in the time that like the 15% is something that we know of, but we don't know what is going to be brought forth. Right. So that's why the second line of this limitation may be waived upon recommendation of the CDA and approved by the village board. So that's really why it's here. And to Jessica's point, it's to have that thoughtful discussion. So if you are going to, recommend beyond it, that there's acknowledgement from the group of the why, which I think Attorney Bayer really synopsized.
And keep in mind too, I mean, when you're talking about affordable housing, it's sort of something unique unto itself in the sense that you're asking a developer to build something brand new and then rent it out at below market rates. And so there's obviously there's going to be a gap somewhere in the numbers to create the incentive to do that. That's why we're doing all these various things. So the percentage, the 15% that was put in there to kind of apply for something up front may not be a good marker for where we're at now.
okay.
If I could just add something to all of that. When we started this journey, we asked for 1.7. We're still asking for 1.7. The 1.7 we said would be used for any gap funding, which is what it's being used for. And if there were any savings, I'd give it back. And I still am committed to that. These are dynamic transactions where you have to take step one to get to step two. And in this case, but for the $1.7 million commitment, there is no WIDA. And then subsequently no AHP.
Right. Okay. Yes.
So it sounds like there's wiggle room in the amount of money that will be required from Shorewood. That money isn't like for sure 1.7. It's going to be figured out as we go along. Is there any risk that 1.7 wouldn't be enough?
Well, if that's all you're committing to, that's all we get. And I have to figure out how to work with it. But the capital stack that we put together based on this pro forma, this is what we have to work with. 3.7 and some change from WIDA, 950,000 from AHP if we win, you're 1.7, and a loan that a first mortgage loan that I will have to obtain from a lender.
All right. Kathy?
So GP equity in the Baker Tilly report amount is $100.
Yeah, that's standard practice. So the way
That GP stands for.
general partner. So in the partnership that we set up, there's a general partner, which is Spro Commercial, and a limited
Which
partner,
is what commercial?
Spro
Oh,
Commercial.
okay.
And then there's a limited partner. The limited partner, who is the equity investor, owns 99.99% of the project because they're putting in 60% of the equity. And that's how they get their return, because they have to be the primary owner during the compliance period in order to take advantage of the depreciation over the holding period of 15 years. That's how they get their 3.7 million back with a return.
And I understand, excuse me, that our village policy 40, because we're doing we're doing, using TIF money that's in a different manner than it was originally designed and written for. So that's the reason there's a lot of NA, right? For non-conforming and conforming, NA, it doesn't apply. I mean, honestly, looking back, it would be better if we had come up with a new policy because this is so unique, but this is what we have. So just one more thing to help me understand the relevance or irrelevance of non-conforming. Payback period, 20-year maximum payback period. Preference will be given to projects with payback periods of 10 years or under. Can you explain to me, what does this mean when it's non-conforming and it talks about the $500,000 estimated taxes? I don't understand. Why is that non-conforming?
I think you're reading off the Baker Tilly report, so I'm gonna turn that over to them if you don't
Thank you.
have any further
And it's
questions for
probably
me.
just my
Yeah.
lack of knowledge about.
I think we should, unless anyone objects, we should probably move on to the Baker Tilly portion of the morning.
Thank you very much. I just want to say congratulations. This has been a journey for everyone, and I hope that you have and I've provided the information that you need to make a decision on this. So just thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Dave Erdman with Baker Tilly Municipal Advisors. That's okay. I'm not going to be doing much talking. So with me is Joshua Davis and Michaela Hewitt. They are going to do most of the presentation. They're the ones that did the memo that's in your packet. We are part of Baker Tilly Municipal Advisors, and we've been engaged by the village to help with your Policy 40 implementation for both the Phase 1 application and the Phase 2 review. In Phase 1, we did the but-for and other financial analysis. This review is going to be working more on the development agreement, but also doing a little bit more research on the applicant. I'm going to turn it over to Joshua and Michaela to do a presentation. Just want to highlight, you heard the developer mention Alex, who also is from Baker Tilly. We are Baker Tilly Municipal Advisors. We're engaged by the village. Alex is a different part of Baker Tilly that helps with housing developments. So while we still have Baker Tilly in the name, we're different parts of Baker Tilly. I believe Alex works in Madison. I might see him in the parking lot, but that's as much as I know Alex. So with that, I'll turn it over to Joshua.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Can everyone hear me okay? If I can just get like a thumbs up or something like that to make sure. Okay, just want to make sure the microphone is working. I guess we've covered most of what was in the Baker Tilly memo as far as project updates and things like that. So I guess we can kind of just jump in. And I'll start with the Policy 40 question that was just asked about the payback period. So our understanding of that, the reason that's non-conforming is because our understanding is that when you provide, say you have TIF funds as an investment, the expectation is that you want to generate enough increment to be able to pay back that initial investment within 10 to 20 years due to the nature of how affordable housing is assessed. They tend to have much lower property taxes. So if you're looking at the payback period over 20 years, the expectation is about just over $500,000 total property taxes collected over 20 years. So that's why we mark that as non-conforming, but also with the note that affordable housing is unique. It's assessed differently. So it's a bit of a different project. This would be more applicable to a market rate development in that case. So before I move on, did we have further questions about that?
I think that's as much clarity as I'll ever get. Thank you.
Okay.
It's not your fault.
So moving on, we've discussed project updates. We were really going to focus on the two major increases in cost. We've also identified in the executive summary just some general policy considerations before the board. That includes finalizing the maximum cap amount for the TIF funds, also the method of reimbursement, how that's distributed, whether that's an upfront pay-as-you-go or if that's upon the completion of the project is something for consideration. And then also we do highlight those two non-conforming parts of the Village Policy 40, which is the payback period and then the property assembly cap that we previously discussed, which currently estimated approximately 22%. For further project updates, we've already discussed no major changes to number of units, no changes to square footage, no material changes to the rents. As for the managerial and financial capacity review, what we're really looking for is when we do the managerial capacity, it's has the developer done projects like this? Do they have portfolio of comparable projects to look at. So we typically, look at publicly available information, their prior projects they've worked on, who their partners are, who they're hiring for architecture, general contractor, things like that. And that's all included here, who those entities are. We provide an overview of those, and we also look for disclosure questions. And the only thing that came up was a property dispute or a property purchase that was reported by Selzer, which is one of the GC partners. So nothing that would, give us pause or anything like that as far as, managerial capacity to complete the project. We do have a note in here that the team's experience leans more heavily on other types of commercial real estate, but as they do have multifamily developments within their project portfolio. So as far as the team's ability to complete the project, we would say they do have the experience and the capacity necessary to get the project done and complete. As for the financial capacity, so this part is subject to an NDA between the developer and Baker Tilly. We had to do that in order to get their financials for this.
I'm sorry, what's
So,
an MBA?
oh, non-disclosure agreement. Just so that we would be able to review the financials and be able to, make a decision about if they have the financial capacity to support this project. And affordable housing is also another unique aspect of this, is the developer's not putting forth a lot of equity like they normally would in a market rate development. So what we're looking for as far as affordable housing is, do they have the financial capacity to meet those guarantees? So whenever they apply for the tax credits, they have to provide guarantees for those credits. So we looked at, the balance sheet for Squirrel Commercial, profit and loss statements, and also their balance sheet for Hampton Affordable, which is the Whitefish Bay project. And we also looked at financial statements for one of the other partners in this project. And based on our review, there's a reasonable expectation that they do have sufficient assets and liquidity to support the project and meet those obligations. And Michaela, did you have anything to add on that? Any other comments?
I do not. I think that's a good summary.
I have a
Okay.
question.
Yes, question.
I don't have a financial background, but Baker Tilly has determined that there is a reasonable expectation. That seems like weak language. Is that for liability reasons, or why would you not say something like highly probable? Or is there a reason? Should I be worried that it's only a reasonable expectation that the applicant has sufficient assets? It doesn't exude a lot of confidence.
That's just our standard language that we use to typically describe the situation. Like based on the information that's provided to us, we have a reasonable expectation, meaning, there is support for this decision and I guess conclusion that we are making. So that's the language we typically use.
Okay, and so Banker and Horicon provided a letter of reference, and that's what it is, right? Wasn't that part of the financial guarantee, was the letter from the banker at Horicon? Was that part of your review?
That was provided from the developer. So that was not part of our financial review. Specifically so what we reviewed is the information that's listed in this financial capacity section, which is subject to the NDA.
So
because it contains personal information.
Okay, so that's a separate submission that he chose to do on his own, the Bank of Horicon letter of reference that has no numbers. It's just a reference.
Yes, that was provided by the developer.
I had a question. It said on page 4 of your report, it says the applicant was reported as restored to good standing. What does that mean? It makes it sound like there was not good standing for a little while, but now they're restored to good standing.
I could let Brian answer that question if he wants. That was, in just our review of looking up the information that's available. That's what we came across.
My mic works. I can answer that. That's just the state. If you pay your LLC fee late one time, this happens to me, I missed it, you are left with that status indefinitely, permanently. You can never.
I'm sorry, if you pay what late?
You have to renew your LLC every year with a $25 fee. I missed one. I have 7 LLCs. I missed one of them 1 year, 15 years ago. And I've even called the state. They won't update ever. You are restored to good standing when you pay it. When they notify you that you paid late, it's a nothing burger.
So you're
not in bad standing. You just paid late one time, a $25 fee. One of the other LLCs, maybe? It sounds like something it's not. It's, you pay that $25 fee late one time.
I can relate. I have the same situation.
Yeah, it never goes back. I called them and they said, no, that's just permanent.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Is there any more from the presentation from Baker Tilly at this point?
I don't believe so. We've covered most of it in the initial discussion, so I think we've provided everything that we would have to say. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In the interest of time, would like to move to the public comment portion unless anyone else on the group up here has a question that needs to be posed at the moment. Okay. Rebecca, can you walk us through the next part?
Sure. If there are members of the public that would like to provide a comment, you're welcome to come to the podium. I just ask that you speak directly into the microphone, actually try to hear your voice being amplified so that people can hear you online. State your name and address, and we ask that you keep any comments to 2 minutes or less.
Handout. Brought homework.
Oh,
This is a very powerful committee. My name is
think you
Jay
may-
Sorensen.
Yeah, just speak I don't.
Closer.
Yeah.
Jay Sorensen, 1916 East Kensington Boulevard. This is a very powerful committee because you have a tremendous amount of authority with what happens with the finances of this village, and how the village is developed. You're also a very difficult committee to reach because this is it. This is our opportunity to speak to you because there's no email addresses for committee members. So I would ask that we have a little bit of leniency in terms of the time because this is a precious moment for many of us to speak directly to you. I see that there are two issues here. One is—
Are you asking for more than 2 minutes?
Pardon?
Are you currently already asking for more than 2
I
minutes?
don't know. I'm going to try to make 2 minutes.
Try to
I'll try to be brief.
Minutes. Thank you.
There are two issues here. One issue is whether or not this is a good development. I have a sense that many of you, I certainly don't fully understand the finances behind this. There seems to be $1 million that's been added to the alley that seems to have been absorbed by the developer, which is very worrying for me because it makes me wonder, how did that happen in terms of the profit level of the original proposal? But that's one issue. I'm here mostly to focus on the issue of parking. And the issue of parking, this parking lot was developed in 1981 by the village. The village bought property and developed it as a 49-spot parking lot. Why? Because of concerns about renter access to parking, as well as street safety issues. We estimate that there are about 540 plus residents of the North Oakland Parking District running from Lake Bluff to Kensington. This parking district has one public lot, 49 spaces. That public lot has 2 handicap parking spaces. When this lot disappears, first off, if you ask me, 2 lots, 2 spaces for handicap in a population of 540 people is absurd. But wait, there's more. The 1981 founding document for the parking district found that the district was short 320 parking spaces below village code. 320. There are on the picture on this handout, there are 8 large apartment buildings adjacent to this parking lot that have 0 parking on their site. Within the 540 population, we estimate there's probably 50 people who have walking disabilities and 70 people who are elderly. Where are they going to park? We can argue the merits of affordable housing all day, but this location, this development simply is in the wrong place. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Greg Suida, 4114 North Lake Drive. To add to Jay's concern about the parking issue along North Oakland Avenue, I was provided a letter by business owner in the healthcare area dated February 25, 26. I don't have the time to read that within the two whole minutes, but basically this business owner is very concerned as she is about to either leave the village because it's a 5-year lease. She says for her patients and the workers in her office that parking is a huge concern and that the sale of this over to affordable housing will cause not only her, but other people that she's talked to who are business owners to really think hard about whether they want to stay here in the village of Shorewood or leave. And so the letter, which I guess we can get copies made to everyone, but basically it really impacts the business owner as well as the renter. And that's something that really wasn't discussed back on May 30th of 2025. And I think the group here should really consider that because we are losing businesses along North Oakland Avenue. We're trying to get restaurants to reopen. We have the issues with the construction there. But businesses may choose to leave. That's another thing that has to be considered along with providing a 19-unit apartment building. Thank you.
I'm happy to take a copy of the letter if you'd like. Okay.
Christine Suida. First of all, I'd like to read the Wisconsin constitutional law says a municipality may not lawfully convey property devoted to an active public use, which is our parking lot, unless the municipality demonstrates that the public use has ceased or that the conveyance serves a primary public purpose that outweighs and replaces the existing public benefit. That's the law. That's a criteria that needs to be fulfilled. And to this point, in my view, the municipality has not demonstrated that the public use has ceased or that the conveyance of this parking lot to Spurl for less than fair market value serves a primary public purpose that outweighs or replaces the existing public benefit. We have 49 parking spots, 2 handicap parking spots. The businesses are speaking, saying they need the parking. The residents are speaking, saying they need the parking. Existing residents are communicating with the board, the public, and I think they should be heard. Secondly, the issue is the gentleman here said the money, the TIP is terminated. That's true. Can't amend it. But I submitted in September of 25 to the trustees letters that I received by contacting Wisconsin State Department of Revenue, Kristen Bilpiak, and also Todd Erickson. Both are TIF experts. And in the email that I forwarded, it states that the TIF money can be returned. Any excess or any TIF money can be returned to the taxing jurisdiction, including the schools. That means that the TIF money does not have to go to affordable housing. It can go back to the schools, and approximately $1 million could go to the schools. That has to be an option that is considered when you're looking at this, spending this money. My third point is that if you look at the application that was originally submitted, Mr. Spurl indicated that if the credits were obtained, there would be not the 1.7 million all would not be used. Today, he said that money will all be used. Why is that different? Because if you really understood what he was saying financially, he's saying, I'm not going to return that money now because the cost is increased. And so basically, this extra money that he's talking about for the elevator and for the social services, which is what I think he said, well, I don't remember the exact numbers now, but this money is why we're not going to get the money back on the TIF, like he said originally in application 1. So who's paying for all this is more money from the taxpayers. The parking lot was sold for $333,000, which is a number he came up with. And he said in the last meeting, it was a plug. It's not the fair market value. The fair market value is more like $1.5 million. So we already gave him $1 million for the parking lot if we go ahead with this deal. Then he said he didn't need all the TIF money of the 1.7 million if he got the credits. Only part of that. And now he's coming to us saying, oh, no, I need it all. And I might have to come back to you for more. So it's going on and on and on. This is not a good deal for the residents. Please, please think about the residents. We're talking about many people who live here who pay taxes, who do not want this. And we're looking at a great idea, but as another gentleman said, it's not the right location. And Shorewood has 93% of its rental properties, which is 52% of the residents, the homes, 93% meet the criteria of affordable housing, not subsidized housing, but River Park has 2 towers. There's over 500 buildings if you actually do the research that actually qualify as affordable housing. It's not that we don't have it. I think it's a great thing for us to try to do. It's just the wrong place and absolutely the wrong cost. Financially, it's not a good deal. As he said, Whitefish Bay didn't pay anything.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, I'm Tom Hoyam from 4238 North Morris Boulevard. It takes a village to fund a project. How many projects can our village fund at the same time? How do they contribute to our quality of life in Shorewood? Some do and some don't. This one, in my opinion, doesn't. I oppose the sale of the parking lot to the developer because of the loss of parking and the loss of quality of life in the area surrounding that. And the residents have reached the maximum dollar amount of projects to fund at one time. Besides current tax incentive projects known as TIF, TID, CID, CDG, and other initials, residents, including renters, fund streetlight replacement, main and water main, and sewer pipe replacement, and smaller ones. In March, the League of Wisconsin Municipalities calendar shows develop and community matchmaking sessions and networking reception on March 25th to bring together the developers and the communities. To the trustees, I say that they should stay away from these matchmakers for right now. The need is there and the opportunities are there for affordable housing. We need to find ways to do it that Shorewood and its residents can afford. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Kathleen Collison. I live at 4117 North Maryland. And I don't have any notes or handouts or even very organized thoughts because I'm speaking from the heart. I hope that's a good idea. But I've been a Shorewood homeowner since 1982 in 2 different neighborhoods, and I've also been a renter in Shorewood. And so I have seen now for almost 45 years all the various changes on Oakland and elsewhere in the village. And perhaps definitely the most disheartening change in our village has been the financing, giving our tax dollars to developers to add, big buildings, residential buildings in the neighborhood, and increasing the density beyond which is sustainable, really, especially if we're talking about taking away parking. I mean, who is going to want to live in those apartments? Who is going to want to open businesses when the area is so dense already? It's difficult. It can be difficult to find parking on North Oakland. But I'm really speaking more toward a long view of a vision for Shorewood, because when I look back 40 years, this was a very different place. And in my opinion, and many others' opinion, there were things about it that were quite a bit better back then. There was just more space to breathe, more space around buildings, more space between buildings. We didn't need, I just will not ever understand the desire or need to stuff the square footage of Shorewood full of dense development. It's just not attractive or appealing. And I really wonder what Shorewood will be like, in the next 40 years. I doubt that I'll be here, but also in regard to this project in particular, I'm not a facts and figures person. I'm kind of trying to keep up with all the facts being floating around. But there's just something about it that raises alarm bells for me. I mean, I'm sure everyone noticed at some point that the affordable housing development in Whitefish Bay on the corner of Hampton and Wilson sat unfinished for a long time, like a concerning amount of long time. And you would drive past and think, well, what's going on there? Why isn't this being completed? I don't know. I didn't hear anything about it. Your developer catchword of the day is winning, 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 and winning. And frankly, that's quite off-putting. I mean, my Shorewood is not a game board for developers. And I just urge everyone to think very carefully about, who is this for? Who are these developments for? Who is benefiting? And what our village looks like to others, it's not as positive as you might imagine. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Hi, I'm Allie Pivar, homeowner at 4453 North Kramer, which is directly behind this parking lot. I'm not prepared either to see anything, but since the parking has come up, it's been a concern of ours since we heard about this project. In addition to right now, we can see having all the street parking not available on Oakland is really creating a big crunch. And I park my car on Kramer and have not been able to park on the block several times recently, which has never happened in the 4 years I think we've owned this house. And it's concerning to remove the parking lot, all of those spots. We're surrounded by buildings that I believe probably are full of renters who use that lot. And in addition to the businesses up and down that block, which I think they mentioned between Lake Bluff and Kensington. I think it would be interesting to see what's happening to their revenues right now, given the construction. And maybe do some projections based on that.
Thank you.
My name is Lynn Milner, 4176 North Newhall. There are a few things. First of all, I was part of with the development of Metromark and the Mosaic. A lot of my neighbors were against it, so I was, but we were not listened to. And while I was at those meetings, there were a group of residents that 100 signatures that they wanted speed bumps on Wilson. And the board said, no. I don't understand why the residents aren't listened to. And also, and this might be really naive, but if there's money to be made from this development, why doesn't Shorewood own it?
Thank you. Next, anyone else? Going once, going twice.
My name is Joan Salentine. I live on Pinedale Court, which most people barely know where it is.
I'm sorry, what street do you live on?
On Pinedale Court.
Hmm.
It's behind Culver's. It's a little cul-de-sac, yeah. I wasn't planning even on saying anything today, but a couple of things. I'm a small business owner. I have been for 30 years. And watching this going on today, I was very unimpressed. Mr. Sporl didn't even seem well informed about what he was talking about. And he should, I realize he has different people doing different things, but he should know everything coming into this meeting. He should have been totally prepared to answer any question. And the other thing that disappointed me is he claimed when one of you asked him what he was charging on this project, he wouldn't answer it out loud. He claimed he didn't know. You know what you're making on the project. You know what you've charged. Okay.
Yeah, that's in the
That's something that the citizens in Shore should be aware of. You should have just been able to say that today and not.
He did say that.
He didn't say the amount earlier when he was asked. He said he didn't know. You should.
Well, just for clarification, we do know it. It's in the public information.
Citizens in Shore should know that too.
Make sure that you're not spreading disinformation here. That number is known. It has been known, and it's part of the information.
With where it's going, like this person said, it's the wrong spot. It's parking is over there is bad anyway. And you're taking away all the parking. You're not even offering them a viable option. I sat in one of your earlier meetings, and somebody on the board said, oh, they can park at the library. Like, you're kidding me. They're going to park at the library and have to take the bus or walk all the way up to that area of Oakland where they live. I mean, that's ridiculous. And you've offered them, people in that parking lot, you've offered them no other options to where they can park. And it's really ironic because the pamphlet that the village put together for the construction, it's actually a perfect outline of how little parking there is there because they offer that parking lot as an option to park, which shows you how little public parking there is in that area of Oakland. Yet you're actually considering taking that lot and putting a building there. It's only required each unit. It's only required one parking spot. So now you're adding to the parking problem. It just doesn't make any sense. And today, listening to you guys, you don't seem like you're clear on a lot of things. So how can you even vote to approve something that he's not clear on and you're not clear on, and that is going to be causing so many parking issues and is not good for the citizens?
Thank you. All right. Did you need to speak again?
Nathan, is Nathan our attorney, right? I want to speak to the legal.
If you can keep it brief, that's fine.
I just want to make one more legal point that I have doubts about is that for 20 years, a special tax assessment, my background is tax, I'm a CPA. There was a special tax assessment assessed on the businesses. for over 20 years to buy and pay for this parking lot. And it is a public use parking lot. And if the businesses
Wait, what are you referring to? That's a
in
really broad
1981,
statement.
in 1981, the village of Shorewood, if you go back into the records, you'll find that there was a Oakland Parking Assessment District established. Because of the parking problems, it was determined, and we're short parking still based on what we should have in this community.
According to you?
that,
From 1981.
Oh,
Okay.
Do we have census data on the number of people in the households from 1981?
Well-
I'm sure in 1981, people from 1937 came and had objection based on what was done
my
back then.
point is that
Talking about
this,
45 years.
I'm talking about individuals who had a special tax assessment to pay for this parking lot, who are now being deprived of it, businesses in this area, as many have communicated. I have doubts about whether that's legal. If you're charging people to buy this parking lot, to make it a public parking lot, I have doubts about whether that's legal. I also have doubts about whether you can legally remove 2 handicap spots and not replace them anywhere in the village, because there are none in that area.
Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. I
Does
think
Nathan, the attorney, want to respond?
Up to you. It's
no, we're just taking public comment today. So, all right. Where are we at, Rebecca? Help me out here.
We're, unless there are other questions from the CDA or discussion amongst members, at this time, I am looking for guidance from the CDA in the form of a recommendation within the scope of your packet. Because sometimes it's helpful to have some verbiage for reference. There was a suggestion if a motion were to be made to recommend or not recommend. So if you want to consider that, or if someone has another motion or action on behalf of the CDA.
Oh, and
No, the initial action that the CDA has requested to either advance the phase 2 application or not. And if so, with the recommendation for public assistance at this point, which is just over 1.6 million.
and then if that had discuss what the specific terms and conditions would recommendation.
So we need to do this motion to get to the next step, which is closed session.
But you would only need to go into recommendation.
Correct. Yeah. Kathy?
Move to not recommend. Commercial LLC building the affordable.
Okay, so clarification, we have a motion to not recommend. Do we have a second of that motion? Hearing none, do I hear a different motion?
I move to recommend a phase 2 application submitted by Sproul Commercial LLC to the village board, requesting 1.6 million in public assistance contingent upon WIDA financing and other financing being awarded, and the execution of a development agreement that commits Sproul Commercial LLC to building the affordable housing project for the public benefit.
Okay, so again, clarification, virtually the same motion, except we are now recommending to recommend. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Joe, second. Should we do a quick roll call vote?
We can't, just first, is there any
just-
further
Oh, yeah,
discussion
sorry.
from the
Any other
members?
discussion that we feel like we need to make right now? Okay. Why don't we do a quick roll call vote? Do I call that? Or do you? do
I'm
that?
sorry. Yes, I would call that for you. Thank you. Typically the clerk doesn't, so I was trying to stay in my lane.
Yeah.
Trustee Stokbrand,
No.
Mitch Opling,
Yes.
Jessica Carpenter,
No.
Joe Lesage,
Yes.
John Kraus,
Yes.
Trustee Warren,
Aye.
motion carries.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. So now that that motion has carried, we can move on to the next step, which is going into closed session.
We'll need a formal motion.
Oh, do we need a motion on that? Okay. Could I get a motion to move into closed session, please?
And it has to state the specifics. It'll be under Wisconsin statute 1985 to discuss additional terms and conditions to be recommended to the village for development agreement with Coral.
Okay.
And I can email that to you later for the minutes if you.
Okay, thank you. So we're getting, sorry. So do we need to state that in the
Yes.
motion?
I moved to move into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute section 1985 1E to deliberate or negotiate the purchasing of public properties where competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session to discuss development agreement for 4448-4450 North Oakland Avenue.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Stokbrand opposed. Okay.
The meeting's adjourned into closed session at 10:34 a.m.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
And Rebecca, my apologies. I have a stop for work, so I have to.
Understood, Wesley. Thank you so much for attending this
Thanks,
morning.
Wesley.
We'll note your departure at 10:35.
Thank you.